Thank you very much, President von der Leyen, for emphasizing the substantial role of the EU on security, the substantial support for Ukraine, and the substantial role in scaling up defense production. We will now have a panel on EU-NATO synergies, and it will be moderated by Monika Sie, Director of the Clingendael Institute for International Relations.
Thank you, Koen. And Your Excellencies, thank you so much for your clear and very concrete directions in your speeches. Having the leadership of the EU and NATO side by side on this platform is a very clear political signal. So, Madam President, why is it so important that your organizations work together?
So, we've spoken about it many times, looking at this room. Let's take the perspective of a member state or an ally. Every country has one single set of forces. And then it's a political decision to send them into NATO operations or European Union missions, United Nations missions, or the coalitions of the willing. So from this angle on, one single set of forces, it's of utmost importance that we work very, very closely together, that in any kind of theaters, these forces can work together and interoperability is given. Everyone here in the room knows how important interoperability is and that it's not so easy to make it happen with the industrial structure that we had so far. So this is something where we really have to work on. The second reason why it is so important that we work together is that the modern hybrid threats do not differentiate between external and internal security or threats. Yeah. So whether it is cyber attacks or it is the sabotage we see, for example, in our infrastructure, but also the traditional warfare, but also the electronic warfare that we see, we have to work extremely closely together to make sure that we are able to deter these threats and to work against them. So two good reasons why NATO and the European Union should work closely together, not to speak of military mobility. All these topics play a big role. I was just mentioning the omnibus, so the simplification in our rules. For example, permitting rules, you know how important that is and how cumbersome sometimes the permitting process is. Now we change this, we reduce the obligation, the permitting process, we reduce the time for permitting. Sounds very technical, is of crucial importance for you. And this is a European Union responsibility, but of course it helps us, but it also helps you. Absolutely. So we are as one. Yeah.
So we know the why, and you have stressed the importance of NATO-EU cooperation for years. How have the organizations stepped up this cooperation more recently?
Well, of course, for NATO, the EU is our essential partner. There's no doubt. And when I came into this office in October, one of the first things I did was grab the phone and call the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, and we had lunch. And basically we said, we have to make sure that this works. Mm-hmm. Because there are risks. Let's be honest. The EU is an organization based on unanimity in many cases. NATO is completely based on unanimity. So you need the 27 in the EU, the 32 in NATO, to come to agreements. And it is not always easy, and then sometimes that creeps into the relations between the officials of both organizations. We said that will never happen. If there is a problem emerging, then we will grab the phone and we will only hang up when we have solved this, and even a comfort break is not on the cards. So it has not happened so far. And why is this important? For all the reasons Ursula was mentioning here. And let me just add, the European Union has this huge soft power of bringing together countries and industries, helping to build a defense industrial base. NATO, of course, focusing very much on the hard stuff of capabilities and standardization. And this is a total fit. And the good thing is, with you at the helm of the Commission, with Andrus in the Commission, with Kaja Kallas, with Antonia Costa, we have people now in the senior leadership in the EU who all have a background to understand why this is important. Next to me is sitting the former defense minister of Germany. So, you don't have to explain to her why this is important.
Indeed, I sat for 5 years in NATO sessions.
Exactly,
and the good part is what you just rightly so said. Excellent cooperation starts with the leadership. So you know the European Union by heart too.
111 summits, I would say.
Wow. Yeah.
That's amazing.
World record.
The fact that you are coming to our college, that you are inviting commissioners to the NAC speaks volumes. And indeed, I want to emphasize here in the room, because I have this NATO experience, it is, of course, guaranteed that with the push in the defense industrial base and the additional funding that we're supplying, I'm fully aware of the fact that we have to look at the identified capability gaps of NATO. And of course, we have to live up to the norms and standards of NATO. It would be completely crazy if we created different worlds. We know already how difficult it is to tackle the fragmentation we have today. So we have to even be better in not having too much divided and fragmented production lines. But because of this knowledge, it is for us essential that we fully align to these NATO standards and norms, for example, or the gap analysis, because this is only how we then create capabilities, military capabilities, that are fit for one single set of forces.
Can I add one thing? What this President of the Commission is doing, one of her first visits was to Turkey. You were able to come to a new deal with the United Kingdom. You were investing in relationships with Norway, of course, with the United States. You and the President of the United States know each other very well. And that all helps, because the EU is 23 of the 32 NATO allies. 29 NATO allies are outside the European Union. But by the fact that this President of the Commission is investing in all those relations, makes it also easier for me internally to get this done. And therefore make use of that combination of power.
That's an important point indeed. Sorry, we take...
Sorry.
No, you can...
take over.
I like
But,
the enthusiasm, yeah.
But as Mark said, we have developed this security and defense partnership agreements. For example, with the UK, that was the first one, with Norway, also with Japan and South Korea, and yesterday with Canada. So through UK, Norway and Canada, of course, comes also NATO mindset into the security and defense partnership that we have in the European Union. And you hear from my words how close we are and how much we work and working together to having the defense posture that is necessary, while knowing that we're different entities, but we know where the adversaries are. We know that we face a common threat. And we know that the adversaries do not differentiate between NATO and the European Union. They have their strategic goals, and we have to deter that.
Yeah, the EU adapts to the geopolitical context. And maybe more specific to this Defence Industry Forum, what more could be done to drive innovation and industrial production?
So, innovation, if you look at the situation at the moment being with Russia's war in Ukraine, I must say, like all of you here in the room, I am deeply impressed how Ukraine, while fighting a war for their survival, has developed a defense industry, drones and ballistic missiles from scratch, because there was nothing 3.5 years ago. And this while fighting a war. And of course, they are extremely innovative. And they explain to me, and I think also to all the others of you, they have learned, then Russia has learned. They have learned, Russia has learned. They have learned, Russia has learned. So they are, I think, the most modern what drones is concerned worldwide at the moment being. But Russia also has this knowledge. We should not underestimate that. So therefore, first point, our innovation office in Kyiv is there that we learn from Kyiv what it's all about. That's one part. Then in general, we have brilliant startups. We have talented people, fantastic minds here in the European Union with super startups. But then we see that this scaling up is difficult. Here in the European Union, it's mostly access to capital and sometimes cumbersome procedures in the single market that is not single enough, but fragmented. So what we do at the moment being specifically create, we call it the Savings and Investment Union, which is a deep and liquid capital market essential for our startups. And to create for innovative startups a so-called 28th regime, so that they have one single regime, legal regime to look at when they want to grow and scale up in the European Union. And the third point is indeed the partnerships we were just addressing. These partnerships, of course, are also important for the strategic depth we need. So these are topics or these are work strands that you can use to boost innovation.
Thank you for those clear examples. And Mr. Secretary General, what main barriers do you see? And how could the organizations cooperate to optimize?
Yeah, well, what I've learned over the years is NATO and the EU are difficult beasts because you have unanimity, you have many different points of view. So perfection is not to be achieved because for perfection you need too much time and nothing will happen in the meantime. So I think what we are doing now is working together in the spirit of keeping speed, the better not being the enemy of good. And when it comes, for example, to developing this whole issue of the defense industrial base and within that, the issue of innovation, the fact that we have this experience between U4 and K4 in the Western Balkans. So we know how NATO and the EU can closely work together. The same is now the case in Kiev. We are really working very closely together, almost as one team, where we have the commands in Wiesbaden, of course, also working for Ukraine. We have our team in Ukraine. We have the EU team in Ukraine. And what we try to do is to make sure that this is all working as one. And having not too many official stuff going on and Mr. So-and-so and excellency this. Keep it practical, keep it going, and know that perfection will never be there, because you will always have allies in NATO or member states in the EU who will try to slow it down a bit. But then you have to make sure that you work on the 80-90% of the countries who really want to speed up. Yeah. Spend your time there. That's much more efficient than spend all your time on the one or two laggards.
That's the spirit. Madam President, Mr. Secretary General, thank you for your guidance and success in the days to come.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. We go out or...
I have no idea. I have no idea. I think we go out. We now go out. Yeah, we go out? Okay.